Think we're probably at a point where we're good to go. So good morning again, everyone. It's great to see so many of you here with us this morning, and welcome to our Wellbeing Wednesday series. Today's topic is neurodiversity in the workplace, and we're very excited to have Michelle with us over at Zurich UK, and I will do a quick introduction of Michelle shortly. But before I do, let me say hello to you myself. I'm Noel Dowds, and I'm the distribution consultant here at Zurich. One of the privileges of my role is that I get to help host these Wellbeing Wednesday series once a quarter. And as I've talked about, and as you all know, today's session all centers around neurodiversity and inclusive hiring practices. So we're very excited. We haven't done one of these before. So thank you once again for joining and welcome. I will just run through a bit of housekeeping before we start, if that's okay. Just for your information, the session is being recorded. So we will send around a recording once we upload it to YouTube at some point today. So keep your eyes peeled on your inboxes, and along with that message we will also be sending around a feedback form. So you know, if there's anything you particularly liked about today's webinar or anything you feel like we could have touched on or we could have improved upon, please do let us know, because it's all really valuable feedback and it will help us deliver content that's more aligned to your needs and preferences in the future. Last bit of housekeeping, I believe. We are setting some time aside at the end for a short Q&A. So if you have any questions you've come in today's session with, or if, as Michelle is presenting, something pops up that you'd like to, you know, question more or know a little bit more about, please do just pop it into the chat and we will run through this after the presentation. So yeah, any questions, just let us know. So without any further ado, I will introduce our speaker today. We have Michelle Ransom joining us. So thank you very much, Michelle. Michelle has over 20 years of experience in the recruitment industry and is a seasoned professional dedicated to fostering a fair and equitable hiring process for all. Michelle's expertise lies in promoting diversity and inclusion within the workplace, and she is passionate about changing the way we hire by focusing on skills and strengths rather than just experience. And throughout her career, Michelle has been a strong advocate for creating inclusive hiring practices that ensure equal opportunities for all. And her commitment to diversity and inclusion is evident in her approach to recruitment, where she emphasises the importance of recognising and valuing the unique contributions of each individual. Michelle's passion for changing the hiring landscape drives her to continuously seek innovative ways to improve the recruitment process. And I hope you're as excited as I am to hear what Michelle has in store for us this morning. So without any further ado, Michelle, if it's all right, I will pass over to you. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thanks ever so much, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today, and thanks for the intro. I might put that on my CV. So let's have a look around what we're going to talk through today. So I'm going to talk to you this morning around neurodiversity in the UK employment market. I'm going to share some of the experiences of neurodivergent job hunters from a recent survey that we undertook. And then I'm going to share with you how Zurich has approached neurodiversity in our hiring practices. So if we start by looking at neurodiversity in the UK employment market today, NHS England statistics show that 1 in 7 UK adults are neurodivergent. This equates to 6 million people. And around 700,000 of those are autistic. But only 3 in 10 are currently in employment. This is a huge figure, and many cited that this was due to the stigma and lack of understanding of their needs within the workplace. It's a well-known fact that neurodivergent candidates can be unfairly disadvantaged by traditional recruitment processes and interview techniques, both of which are often designed for a more neurotypical individual. If we move to look at diversity in the insurance sector, the industry is clearly facing a retirement cliff, and we know that we have issues attracting diversity. I think we can all agree attracting young people is proving difficult. The London Market Group data shows there are as many people aged over 60 as there are under 30 working within the insurance sector. And 25% are expected to retire within the next 10 years. Now, there has been some progress with diversity, but it's moving very, very slowly. The ABI data puts ethnic minority representation at 11% across firms, and the proportion of women at senior manager and director level at 32%. The industry has made great inroads at targeting university graduates, but creating a more diverse workforce requires other talent pools to be explored and not excluded. So how could a neuro-inclusive hiring process help you? With so many people identifying as neurodivergent, not considering these candidates when we're designing hiring processes risks excluding a significant proportion of the labour market. Neurodivergent employees have many skills and talents to contribute to the workforce, including innovation, creativity of thought, and technical thinking. To run a business effectively, it's well proven that your team needs to give the widest representation of your customers in order to have the best success. And this includes neurodiversity. We recently ran a survey externally where we spoke to 1,000 neurodivergent adults about their experiences job hunting and how the process could be better. And we found some really interesting stats that I'm going to share with you today. Here's some of the headlines that they told us. 2/3 of employers see neurodiversity as a red flag than a strength. And over half the population said they've been asked inappropriate or invasive questions during an interview. When we asked them about when they were applying for jobs, half shared with us that they had been discriminated against because of their neurodiversity. 3 in 10 had their application rejected after sharing that they were neurodivergent. And 1 in 6 declared that they'd had a job offer rescinded, which is quite shocking to hear. When it comes to disclosing neurodiversity, almost half felt that they couldn't or shouldn't disclose, mainly due to the fears about the stigma or preconceptions of what that might mean to their manager or the company. 2 in 5 said they were worried about disclosing would give people a preconception of who they are before they'd even met them and seen what they were capable of. When we turn to look at the recruitment processes, many felt that the current processes are designed to weed them out rather than assess their abilities effectively. Common complaints from the sample were complicated question structures, overly long application forms, vague job descriptions, and the possibility of a presentation in an interview. If we think about these are things that are already putting people off before they've applied, think about the huge population that aren't even applying for our vacancies if this is how they feel when they're looking at a company. We asked them what impacts this may have had on their personal and professional life. Many said that aspects of their personal life, such as finances and career growth, have been impacted by these barriers. Not surprisingly, they reported that their confidence was impacted the most, closely followed by their mental health and career growth. Even things like negotiating their package and working needs has been affected. It's clear to see from this data that we need to be much more inclusive in our processes. When we asked them about interview adjustments, of those that we spoke to, only 1 in 6 said they'd been offered adjustments unprompted when interviewing, despite the Equality Act making it law in 2010. A third did report that they were offered adjustments, but only after they had to ask the employer. So we asked the sample, what would be a helpful adjustment for you? What would make your life more comfortable going into a process? On the screen, you can see there's quite a few, and they've all scored relatively highly. Clearly explaining the logistics and instructions of an interview came out on top, followed by removing any group interviews or assessments within a process. Only ask for essential job requirements and qualifications if they're truly essential to the role. You can see from looking at this list that many are not too difficult to implement, but would make a huge difference to your candidates. Even something simple like changing the language that you use can be quite ambiguous to a neurotypical individual. Hopefully this list gives you some food for thought for you if you aren't already offering some of these minor adjustments. But they did report it's not all bad news. 63% said things are getting better than they used to be for neurodivergent people, and that it's getting easier for them to disclose. Many are getting a formal diagnosis to help them feel more confident at work, and also with themselves and with their colleagues and managers. So what has Zurich done to help? At the start of this year, we enhanced our employee healthcare offering to offer all our employees free neurodiversity assessments. It really does help for them to understand themselves and how they might like to work. The offering is also available for children and partners if they are part of the healthcare plan. And when we look at our recruitment processes, what have we done there? Well, we've worked with one of our partners, Ambitious About Autism, to run a series of training sessions. And this has been for hiring managers, and employees. Everyone's welcome. And this has been run via webinars and drop-in sessions. And it's been an opportunity for people to ask questions about how to be neuro-inclusive, how to be a better manager or colleague of someone with autism. We've added sensory maps to our website. This is to allow colleagues to choose where they want to work within our offices, depending on their needs. And this could change on any particular day, but it gives them a view of what they might be walking into, so there's no surprises. We've removed subjective language and unnecessary qualifications from our job descriptions. Like I mentioned before, if you don't need a degree, don't ask for it. If you don't need 10 years experience, don't ask for it. If the role isn't a customer-facing role and is more of a data analytical role, don't ask for things like good communicator. Be clear and explicit about what it is that you might need within that role. And don't ask for nice to haves, because a long list will put off not just a neurotypical application, but actually anyone else. If the list is too long, it's a big deterrent. We've reviewed our interview questions for length and clarity. Many of you on this screen will have been through an interview where the interview question was really lengthy. And quite often that's because the main question is asked, followed by a series of probing questions, so that the interviewer can try and get the absolute maximum out of you in that short window that they've got to understand who you are and what you're about. For a neurotypical candidate, these need to be asked individually. They will find it quite challenging to decipher what the main question is that they need to be answering. Another thing that you could do if you're holding a remote interview is type the question in the chat function so that the individual has the opportunity to read it for themselves, digest it, and then respond appropriately. We offered all of our roles on a part-time or job share basis, and we encourage all of our employees to talk to their manager to work out a flexible pattern that works for everybody. We've had the GAIN group review our recruitment process to ensure that they are inclusive and neurodivergent candidates. And one of the main things that came out the back of that was we now have a template, a job advert template, which we can tailor depending on the audience that we're appealing to. Following the survey results you've seen today, we ran this externally as a wider PR campaign to share these findings, and it was clear to see people were engaged with what we had to say. We saw a 31% uplift in traffic on our careers page compared to the same time the previous year, which shows neuro-inclusion matters to job seekers. Whilst work has and is being done, it's clear this is an emotive topic, and as an employer, we can always do more. I hope you found this useful. I appreciate I've rattled through them relatively quickly and I didn't cover all the points on the slides, but I hope it's given you some food for thought. And if anyone has got any questions, please do put them in the chat and I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Yeah, that was very interesting. And I mean, there's, as you mentioned, quite a lot on the slides there. So just to make everyone aware, if we haven't already, we will be sending around the slides after the session as well. So anything that either Michelle mentioned or that was on her slides that she didn't cover will all be made available to you. So yeah, a lot of information there to take away. And I mean, if anyone has any questions, it would be great to hear them. So please do post anything on the Q&A if anything is burning in your mind. So we can just give it a couple of minutes and no worries if not.
Quiet audience today.
I know, I know. And also, if nothing is springing to mind now, Michelle, I'm sure that we can pick up anything offline. I'll send round my email in the follow-up, and we can direct anything to Michelle. We do have a question that is coming from Sarah. So the question, Michelle, is what adjustments can be made in the workplace for a neurodivergent person, please?
That's a really great question. And I think it's really important to have that conversation, if the individual is willing to, with their manager first and foremost. It's important to understand, here at Zurich, we very much go by the recommendations of the individual. So it could be something relating to their workstation. It could be something related to the area that they work within. It could be thinking about what days of the week they go into the office, if there's an office presence required. It's making sure that there are regular breakout spaces, quiet spaces if they need them, so that they can go and have a break if and when they need it. But we're always led by the individual, and 9 times out of 10, they will know themselves what they feel like they might need, but nothing should be off the table.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I suppose it's one of those, such a broad spectrum when we talk about the term neurodivergent, that each individual case is different. So thank you for that, Michelle.
So if you think about dyslexia as an example, obviously you can have special screen cover overlays, special monitors. So there's lots of different things. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It completely depends on the needs of the individual.
Excellent. Thank you. We have another question that is coming from Claire. Claire has said, hi, I have ADHD, late diagnosis as my daughter was diagnosed. How can we educate our colleagues to understand us better? For example, procrastination, interrupting people, and just generally pointing out that people need to be educated. Do you have any thoughts on that, Michelle?
Well, and this is exactly what we did with Ambitious About Autism, was running those webinars and sessions for people to help them understand, exactly like you've said, interrupting at times, having a busy mind, struggling to get it out. Is, if it's possible, partner with someone like Ambitious About Autism to come and support the company to help them educate colleagues and managers on how to work with people that might be neurodivergent. I would definitely recommend that. Equally, if your company runs medical questionnaires, if you haven't had one since you started, you can ask for another one, and that will come back with a series of recommendations, which might be helpful to share with your manager, because it might help your manager understand how you like to work or how you might react in certain scenarios.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We've had some lovely comments from Hetty and Alison. Thank you very much for pointing out Zurich's efforts in this space. It's something we're definitely very proud of. I believe we have another question from Sarah. What tips if you are working for a neurodivergent person, please? How best to keep that person happy? Again, I suppose that's quite a broad scope for that question.
And it's interesting because the question is, if you were working for a neurodivergent person, I'm going to go on the assumptive and they know that they're neurodivergent. I think it's about having a really honest conversation with them about how they like to work and how they would like you to interact with them. And I think it's the same as any work relationship. Over a period of time, you become more confident in your dealings with that individual. But I would just have an honest conversation with them and say, if say it's your manager as an example, or a peer, how do you want to be communicated with? Would you prefer, so as an example, I've got a neurodivergent person in my team. They like to have their camera off when we have their weekly one-to-ones. I've got another individual that would prefer to just have a Teams conversation and doesn't want to have a one-to-one dialogue, which is fine 99% of the time, as long as we're really clear with the communication boundaries that we're using, and I'm really clear with what my expectations are, and vice versa. And Claire did ask about getting a diagnosis. I would recommend it. I think it gives, for you as an individual, I think it gives you a really good insight into who you are and how you work and how your mind works at times. And it just might help you feel a little bit more comfortable and confident to then explain that to somebody else, especially as it's come a bit later in life for you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Michelle. Something Charlotte has mentioned, which is a slightly different spin, I guess. If it's about approaching conversations with your employer to consider neurodiversity further in cases of employees that may not yet have a formal diagnosis.
Naturally, it's going to be a sensitive topic, and I think your first port of call would be to speak to your benefits team. You know, this is a topic which is becoming ever growing, and it's only going to become more prevalent. People are going to follow suit like we have and start offering it as part of your benefits package, as part of your healthcare. I think it's wise to start recommending that. You could potentially use some of the stats from the slide today in terms of how many people in the population are out there. And start opening that dialogue around, you know, it's the right thing to do.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We've got quite a few questions coming in here, so fortunately we have got a bit of time to pick through. Michelle, sorry you are in the hot seat. We have a multi-part question here from Jorlin. So what part of the recruitment stage do you ask if the candidates have a reasonable need for adjustments through the process? Is it best to include this at the point of application? And what is the best way to ask at this stage? Would this be put into the job advert, or is it best to ask at the interviewing stage?
Great question. So at Zurich, we ask it 3 times. So the first time we ask it as part of the application process, and it says, do you require any reasonable adjustments for the interview process? If you tick yes, please share below if you're happy. We ask them again when we book the interview. So when the interview is arranged, they are asked at that point again, do you require any reasonable adjustments? And then when they get their interview confirmation, it is also stated on there, if you require any adjustments, please do let us know. I see no harm. We have something in our advert which says, talk to us at interview about any flexible or adjustments you might need in the workplace, something along those lines. And that's relating also to the hours that you work. So there's absolutely no harm in putting it in the advert as well. I think it's about making these people feel really comfortable with you.
And as much of a heads up as possible early on makes a lot of sense. So we've spoken about what Zurich is currently doing, and we've had lots of nice comments about our approach there. But Anna's question is, what adjustments is Zurich looking to implement in the future for neurodiverse individuals on top of our already fabulous offerings?
So in my introduction slide, it was mentioned that we look at skills and strength-based assessments as opposed to a competency. We are piloting in different areas of our business, offering this type of interview question as opposed to a tell me about a time. It's quite hard sometimes to think on the spot of your best example. So we're looking at trying that in different areas. The other thing that I don't do, but the facilities team are doing, is regularly looking at our offices. Are our workstations appropriate? Do we have enough breakout spaces? Do we have enough quiet rooms to work from? I'm in the Swindon site today. We've got a specific quiet room that people can book out and go and work in, which is quite effective. And it's just going to be keeping on top of listening to the feedback. What else do people need? As people get more comfortable to disclose this information, that's going to help educate us and us as a company in terms of what we can do to make their working life better.
Excellent. And I think this leads on quite nicely actually to Alan's question. Hello, Alan. And it's more in relation to the onboarding process. So assuming you've been successful in improving the recruitment process with regards to neurodiversity, what should we consider during the first stage induction and onboarding experience of an employee?
This is a great question. And this is where it gets slightly more challenging, because most companies will do a medical questionnaire. An application or an individual will declare that they have a condition that might need reasonable adjustments in the workplace. We then have to ask that individual, can we have your permission to disclose this to your line manager? So first and foremost is we need the individuals to feel comfortable that we're sharing that information. And that handoff is crucial, because at that point, we need to make sure we're really supporting that manager with what they need. And that's actually a little project that we're looking at the moment internally, to make sure that we are well equipped to make sure that individual is set up for success from day one when they come in. So I think it's really key to make sure that handoff to the manager happens straight away. And if we can get the manager and the individual talking before they've even started, then we can get that ball rolling to make sure that their setup is as it should be for day one.
Excellent. Thank you, Michelle. Quite a broad question here from Fiona. it's would or maybe should managers undertake training when employing a person with neurodiverse needs? And does Zurich have any of that available?
Yes, we do have some bite-sized webinars that they can attend. I would imagine there's also some materials on LinkedIn Learning that people can tap into. But absolutely, the more training that can be offered, the better. We do have some, and again, we would tap into Ambitious About Autism to continue running sessions for us. And we are looking whether GAIN can offer something different as well. But yeah, if there's an opportunity to offer training, then brilliant, take it up.
Excellent. Thank you. We've seen a question from Alison about adjustments that could be made for individuals that haven't yet been diagnosed as being neurodivergent, but I wonder if maybe we did touch on that earlier, or if there's anything else you want to add to that, Michelle.
Sorry, what was the question?
So what adjustments can be made for those people that we think might be neurodivergent but haven't yet been diagnosed?
Yeah, and I think that's you just have to be really careful with that, because we don't want to make an assumption that someone's neurodivergent if they haven't had it disclosed. But I think just having an open conversation with someone to say, I've noticed you prefer to communicate in this way, or talk to me about how you like to work effectively with me, with your colleagues, with your manager, and start opening that honest dialogue. But I'd steer clear of saying, I think you might be neurodivergent.
Excellent. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I think there might be, and I'm trying to keep track of these questions. Sorry if I haven't got to them all.
Joralyn's asked about the hiring managers being able to see. That's quite controversial. No, they shouldn't be able to see it. So we have in our ATS, we have the application questions, which I cannot see. And then we have the pre-screen questions that only I can see. So in an ideal world, you would shield that information from your managers. But ultimately, as the hiring team, it's my decision to, I partner with the business to make sure that they see the people that are most suited to the roles, and that we're not seeing any bias in the process. So I absolutely would pick up on that. That would be a red flag to me if someone was trying to weed someone out on that basis.
Brilliant. That's really useful. Thank you, Michelle. I'm not sure. I think we might have got to all of the questions, but I think if we haven't, we can always cover anything offline. We probably need to be drawing to a close now anyway. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us today for this webinar. There's been a lot of interest in the Q&A, so I'll take it from that we've all found some real benefit and value from what Michelle has had to say to us today. And as I mentioned, we'll be sending around the slides as well as a YouTube recording after the session. And please do let us know in the feedback form, you know, how you think it went and how we can improve. That'd be really useful. So thank you again, everyone. And thank you very much, Michelle. And yeah, we look forward to hopefully seeing you all at our next Wellbeing Wednesday webinar. And until then, look after yourselves and have a great day.